Hey there. Are you tired of waiting for the next episode of It's Probably Not Aliens? Well, we've got some good news for you. On Nebula, our streaming service, you can get access to all our episodes a week early. That's right. You'll never have to wait again to hear Scott and I debunk the latest ancient astronaut theory or get a movie fact wrong. But that's not all. Nebula is home to dozens of content creators we know you like, so you can find all your favorites in one place. Plus, we post content on there that you won't find anywhere else. And the best part? By signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probablyNotAliens, you're directly supporting the show and both of us. So don't wait any longer. Join Nebula today and listen to the next episode right after this one.
We're on separate beds.
Yeah, but we are all right. So when you think of like we're gonna podcast together, you think like the Joe Rogan studio or like the thing. We are currently sitting cross-legged on two double beds
in a hotel room, trying desperately to not have the mics bleed into one another so it sounds echoey in here. Tristan and I are in person recording the very first ever in-person episode of this
first
podcast.
Ever Inhuman podcast
ever conceived by humankind. We just got out of, like, literally an hour ago.
We got out of Ancient Aliens, then immediately got beer, and then
we DoorDashed beer to the hotel. We're drinking room temperature Blue Moon.
This podcast sponsored by Blue Moon. Drink at warm temperature. It's the best temperature.
It's great.
Drink your Blue Moon before it gets cold.
And we just got out of seeing Ancient Aliens live, a
thing
live
we intentionally
tour.
chose to do with our lives.
I have so much to say. I don't even have like a cold open for this. I just want to start talking about this. So this is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, the quickest intro we've ever done because I have so many thoughts.
Did Joss Whedon, was he involved in any part of this?
Don't think so. We're skipping over the Joss Whedon
This is
talk.
how fast the show goes when he doesn't have access to IMDb.
That's right. In a different conversation we were having before this, I do have the IMDb page pulled up for the cast of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but we can't get into that.
Here's the podcast challenge now. That is the only movie reference you can work into this podcast episode. So now you have to, your improv prompt is you have to find ways to make it like this is exactly like this is exactly like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
This is exactly like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
For Stu's only ever seen the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Get a lot of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen vibes from Ancient Aliens Live.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it.
I can see it. All right.
So
my name is Scott Nicewander. I usually know nothing, but I've seen this. I've witnessed this with my own eyes, and I have so many thoughts.
My name is Tristan Johnson, and honestly, this time I think Scott's the strongest because he's the commentator person, and I'm a person who I want to paint a picture. So Tristan,
please do.
Tristan went with a notebook and a pen. I took 8 pages of notes during it, including one part where I did some math.
I have no idea what Tristan scrawled on this, but you've covered several pages of
But
notes.
Here's the main thing is I also don't know what I scribbled on this because it was in the dark and I have bad handwriting at the best of times and I write in cursive. So
that's okay. If you can guess, we can probably get a feel for it. So right off the bat, Ancient Aliens Live. We saw it in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, very beautiful theater. Looks like it was good for opera.
Amazing theater. Kalamazoo State Theater. Holy cow. Kalamazoo State Theater. If you've never seen it, I'm sad that this is the first and probably only thing I will ever see at the Kalamazoo State Theater. What a gorgeous theater.
All right. Here we go. Moonshot goal. This podcast gets big enough that we get to go on the podcast tour.
Yeah.
Kalamazoo State Theater.
State Theater. We're going for it. So that set the stage immediately for me because I was expecting this to be a much smaller, more intimate venue. There was how many people they said it was 1,000 people.
It looked like there was about 1,000 people. I believe it. It was big. We didn't even get the full picture because we were on the second
balcony,
floor. We were in the up. I don't know what you call that part. The nosebleeds. And it was. I will say the upper part definitely was not super populated. There was definitely still a lot of vacancies, and also notably there were a lot of people who left during the show.
There were people who left during the show. It ran long and late, and we're gonna address this at some point, but the crowd was old, man. The crowd was so old.
Yeah, they definitely need to get home so they can make what's it called, Murder, She Wrote, and
you can't make the show this long, this late into the night, when this is your crowd, when your audience are people in their 80s. You can't make it this late into the night and run this long. Out of all the stagecraft or like craftsmanship, entertainer qualities of this show, I think that was their biggest pitfall, is like they know their audience in a lot of ways. They don't seem to understand the age of the audience and like that this show should be earlier.
Yeah, if I was thinking about it, like from the way that they sold the show, like there's ways in which they definitely were like, oh, like people are coming because they believe in the memes. They like the memes. They leaned so hard into the Giorgio Tsoukalos big hair aliens meme.
Very first thing Giorgio Tsoukalos did when he came out on stage, before he picked up a mic, he got out there, stood center stage, and did the hand gestures thing to an applauding audience.
Yeah, like standing ovation. And then proceeded for that to be the only joke he would make for the entire evening.
And the only joke that other people would make about him.
Yeah.
was just talking about his hair.
Yeah, so that was that. And then also the other general note from the whole thing is that we were seated rather close to what I am just hoping is some, you said it's Western, the university here, Western Michigan?
That is a university.
Okay, what I'm hoping is just a university student who was just completely shit-faced, who was just like, yeah! Like, treated it like he was like painted head to toe at a football game or something.
Yeah. There was a lot of loud whistling. There was a lot of loud cheering. I said this to you. I never felt unsafe in the crowd, but I absolutely felt uncomfortable with the amount of people like genuinely being like, this is what we believe.
It was a strange world to be in. I'm somebody who researches right-wing terrorism for a living, but has almost exclusively lived in the online spaces of that. To be like, not to call these people right-wing terrorists, but to just be like in the belly of the beast of a bunch of people who are really into really, really flimsy conspiracy theories. It was just like, it was interesting to see the self-selection of who came out for that.
And all right, we haven't even really talked about what this show is or what they did. I don't know what I was expecting. What were you expecting this show to be?
Honestly, because of the description of the show, I kind of got what I expected, which was that I think that this was what I think in the industry is called a quick and cheap cash grab.
Yeah.
Where they wanted to make a bunch of money, and a live show is a very easy way to do that. And the description was so generic that I was like, it's going to be them coming in and saying a bunch of very generic stuff. And they're going to love it because it's all of just like hardcore Ancient Aliens fans just hearing all their favorite things. And then that's it. And then they'll take everybody's money and then go do the next thing, including our money. So
they took our money.
Yeah.
We contemplated several times getting some merch from the merch stand, and we didn't actually get
we couldn't
anything.
bring ourselves to that.
But you pretty much nailed it. I think for me, I was a little let down because I really genuinely thought this was going to be a show where they could like be let off their leash a little bit and be like, this is the stuff that History Channel won't let us say.
This is the alien that fucks.
This is the alien that this is the alien that Von Daniken fucks.
Yeah.
This is that.
You know, Alien Autopsy? We got alien sex tape.
I was expecting that. I was expecting a little bit of like, this is the stuff we're not allowed to talk about. But it was still obviously like sponsored and sanctioned by History Channel.
Yeah. So.
Because they had clips throughout that were very, I mean, obviously,
very branded. They were just commercials for the show.
They weren't just from the show. They were like branded at the end with a big History Channel logo as well.
Yeah, they feel like the kind of like 30-second clips you post on Twitter to like advertise the show.
That helped break up four guys on a stage talking about aliens. But it was the same stuff that we debunked in like our first 30 episodes of this podcast.
Yeah, it was all the hits. I got a couple things that came through that I have notes that did come through, which is one, they did refer to them as a panel of experts, and I just wrote experts in quotation marks.
Yes. Can we talking about Giorgio Tsoukalos coming out on stage? We just did an episode about David Childress. Yeah. Did you write this down at all, or just
that they did referred to as
they referred to him as this is my favorite thing about David Childress. He doesn't refer to himself as real life Indiana Jones. He says that other people refer to him as the real life Indiana Jones. So he's like further distancing that idea, like, oh, hey, I didn't say it. I didn't say I was real life Indiana Jones.
And he'll probably sue you if you say that he said it.
Some people have said that I'm the real life, and they did the same thing on stage. They were like, the presenter, Nick Pope, was like, some people call him the real life Indiana Jones. And it's like, nobody calls him that.
He does.
Nobody calls him that.
The other thing, too, is they had a guy named William Henry, who I guess is another guy who's from the thing. And two things stuck out. One, that he somehow worked for Robert Downey Jr.
Wild.
Like, I need to know the story there.
I gotta know more.
And then also just the job title he gave himself of investigative mythologist.
Yeah.
I was like, that to me, that title says so much, which I guess is really a good idea for a title, but it's just like, he definitely didn't get a PhD in investigative mythology at Cornell.
Another thing that I found was interesting about the show is before the show, they had stuff playing on screen and repeated a couple times that you absolutely cannot have your phone out during this event. But also another slide said to like tweet along with the conversation and submit questions using the hashtag, Ask Ancient Aliens or something like that. To which I would say, and we'll get into this, absolutely, I guarantee you, not a single one of these shows that they're doing on this tour has any different questions than the two questions that they asked tonight. They only did two quote unquote audience questions. Absolutely was not an audience question.
And they were like literally like, if you ask the most generic question of these people, what would they be?
Yeah.
The other thing too that I forgot until I read this again, and I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe that actually happened, is that then when everything settles down, the panel settles down, and it's very obvious that what was his name? Nick or whatever.
Nick Pope.
Yeah, Nick Pope was going to be like the MC because he's like the moderator. The stagecraft, the format was that it was supposed to be a panel. It wasn't a panel. It was a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
But not part of that. Before the person who's supposed to be MCing gets to talk, Giorgio takes the mic, takes the lead pad, and does the cringiest stand-up act in human history. Just like a series of like alien jokes that like only someone who's like 105 years old would find funny.
A series is even generous, calling it a series. I think it was 2 jokes, which is like either do 3 and commit to like that, like the rule of 3s in comedy, or just do 1. 2 is weird. 2 is a weird number of jokes to do, Giorgio.
Yeah, so that came out here. That one, that was rough. And also, I think we talked about this on the way home a little bit, that like boomer humor. Like,
yes.
Like maybe that is them knowing their audience, because like a lot of references to like 1960s rock bands and like one of them was like, what would you like? One of those 2 questions was like, if you could be an alien, what would you ask? And the first person was like, I would ask if they like the Beatles or the Stones, and just grandpa's gone wild.
Can I just say as well, huge, and this is not unique to these people. This happens at any sort of live performance sort of a thing, because you want to win the crowd over. So much Kalamazoo talk.
Oh God, yeah.
Like, how like a musician or like a comedian or something will be like, how we doing, Kalamazoo, make some noise, you do that sort of thing. Deep. They were like researching facts about Kalamazoo to talk about like specific artists, like specific musicians and stuff that were famous and were from here, specifically to like work into their quote unquote improv. I will get this out of the way, and I'm sure we'll revisit it throughout. This show is so heavily scripted. It is presented as 4 people on a panel just having a conversation. It is so clearly so scripted.
There were 2 screens acting as a sort of like what I think was sort of like a teleprompter, but then also all of them just had clipboards in front of them and pre-made slides to cover the topics that they were talking about.
Which is fine. If you want to do a TED Talk with pre-made graphics, do that. Don't pretend like you're having an earnest, candid conversation.
Don't call somebody a moderator for a PowerPoint presentation.
There's no need for Nick Pope to be called a moderator. He's not a moderator. You're all just people reading through a script, and that's fine. It's a form of entertainment. It's just weird that you are structuring it in this way.
Yeah. The other thing that also stuck out to me is that for the first time, we got some actual autobiographical information about Georgios Tsoukalos, which we did not have, where he mentioned that his path to whatever it is that he is doing with his life right now started with him living in Switzerland and just getting into his grandmother reading him Eric von Daniken, like Chariot of the Gods when he was a kid, and then him going to Daniken lectures and then becoming his apprentice.
All the other panelists said that they discovered Chariots of the Gods by themselves, but Georgios Tsoukalos said he's obviously the youngest of all of them.
He's a youngin in his
he's
40s or something like
youngin. All the other ones are in their 70s or something.
Yeah.
And he's very young, and I say that like
he's like 15 years older than me.
Sure. And we're young also.
Yeah.
As well.
I'm a sprightly 34-year-old.
Absolutely, of course. But he was the only one who said that he didn't discover von Daniken by himself. It was, like you said, his grandma who was reading him bedtime stories and got bored and was like, well, how about I'm going to read you these other ones?
Atlantis and Chariots. And then he started going to Daniken lectures as like a fan, and then started becoming his like apprentice, and then is now doing
openly refers to Daniken as his best friend.
Yeah. I want you all to know that Daniken is my best friend. And also he sent me a text today to say that he loves all of you and that he thinks you're cool and that your wiener is huge.
Hey, is there something, and I don't want to sow the weeds of a conspiracy here, but is there something a little weird that unprompted Georgios Tsoukalos was like, von Daniken sent me I just talked to him 3 days ago. He's perfectly healthy. He's in the best form of his life. Like he was like he went on for a little bit too long talking about von Daniken's
He's so
health.
healthy.
And I'm just like, oh, he doesn't have long, does he?
Yeah. He's a sprightly 88. But on top of that, there was like, I interpreted it a different way, which is I'm kind of going off the like cynical cash grab. So it was like von Daniken like wishes he could be here. The ticket prices just weren't high enough, but then also, but like, so he, like, they were like, he cares about you a lot. He loves you, each and every one of you. He was going to kiss you on your head goodnight every night when you go to bed.
That's right.
But then also, one of the regular panelists for the other parts of the tour was not there. And so we got another like very weird video of like him just kind of saying some things.
I want to do research on this guy because this guy was pretty new to me.
Yeah. I think he shows up in the later seasons of the show that we haven't gotten to yet. So there was that, but it also just like all of it, to me, all of it had the distinct ring of like phoned in. Like they're like, thank you for your money.
Yes.
Bye.
They kept referring, Georgios Tsoukalos kept referring to all the stuff they were going to talk about tonight as smoking guns. He used the phrase smoking guns about 5 or 6 times. He just kept saying, these are the smoking guns of ancient astronaut theory. And it is all, it's all the hits. It's everything that we've talked about they started with Stonehenge. I mean, literally the amount that they kept talking about transportation of big rocks.
Yeah, I think I said to Scott during the thing where they were like it's not like Egypt is flat, but like England has like hills and rivers. And then I just like whispered to Scott, I'm like, how are we ever going to figure out how to transport things with rivers?
Like so much of the opening was the meme about how move big rock.
Yeah, it was how move big rock. Then some mentions too. There's actually a couple topics that I was like, oh, we still haven't done Stonehenge. We're 102 in, but we haven't done Stonehenge yet. Yeah, that is another bit that they also were weirdly diplomatic in trying to not be like how brown people do thing, but also there's another part about like the no, you're actually the racist for not believing in aliens. But they got some other topics that we haven't done yet, like Baalbek. Which looked kind of cool. I didn't know anything about that.
No, that looked neat.
Oh, and also just like a lot of claims that we can't duplicate a lot of the things that they do. And it was like things that we have already figured out how to duplicate and have done way bigger versions of.
Yeah.
Like, we can't make a stone obelisk today. And I was like,
What are you talking
Bitch,
about?
Washington has like a humongous one.
We got one.
Yeah. Do you think that like the settlers showed up in like the swamps of Washington D.C. and were like, maybe we should build our city around that giant thing that's sticking up out of the ground?
It says what? There's a plaque that says George Washington. Well, you got to find this guy and make him president.
Yeah. So that was funny.
It's literally all the only one they didn't mention was the Sakara bird. Specifically,
It's true. TFB did not make it into the show,
but we had Nazca lines, we had pyramids, we had Stonehenge, which we haven't done. Yeah, we had Puma Punku.
The Kimbaya one was very good because it eventually turned into a pitch for a thing that you can buy at the merch stand.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That was funny too. And all Giorgio Tsoukalos wears a pin of the what I guess he would call it the
Kimbaya
airplane. Yeah. He wears a pin of that on his clothes, and he was like, you can buy a pin of it, this pin, not all the fakes that are out there trying to copy it. And all that did was alert me that I could get one without giving him money.
You could probably get one off Etsy or something.
Yeah.
The other thing too that I thought was funny about that is that when they go to the Kimbaya airplane, they then go like kind of like on a detail, like, yeah, people say that this is like a fish, but this is a fish, and then it's like another one that looks actually a lot like it. But then they go like, and like, how do you explain what this thing is and this thing is? And like, you can't. It has to be an airplane. And I just look at it, I'm like, the things that they're not mentioning are like the eyes and the antenna on it. And I was like, it's probably like a moth or something like that. And it's like,
it's so many things that we've touched on, which is where I sort of got disappointed. But something that I started picking up on was this theme of, again, I do think they understand that their audience are older people largely, because there was a lot of talk about respecting your ancestors and respecting the past in a way that is like, they're not actually doing that. Like, you and I agree, Ancient Aliens is not actually respecting like ancient cultures largely, but this framing of, we want to be mindful of our ancestors and like isn't it important to learn about our ancestors and our history? I feel like really spoke to the older people in the crowd, especially the older people who probably are on their way out, or even just like culturally feel like they're already on their way out.
Or just like people are like, yeah, people need to my granddaughter who's got too many genders didn't come to Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
They need to learn to respect me.
Exactly. And like, there was a moment where Giorgio Tsoukalos, like you were saying, there was like, they were trying not to be, I think probably because it was sanctioned by
History Channel.
The History Channel, they were trying not to be too openly, I guess they were trying to keep it like
Diplomatic
is a good way of putting it.
Because like they said something about like, we don't hate mainstream archaeologists. They're very essential, doing all their digging around in the dust and I'm like, this is the most insulting way to describe what an archaeologist does while saying that they don't hate them.
They said cleaning shards and digging dust, I believe was the phrase
and I was like,
used.
That is because archaeologists do real work, and they don't, it's kind of like I'm trying to think like I think that this fits into the thing of like, the desire is that the world could like learning and like exploration and like doing this kind of work can be both easier and more like the discoveries can be more profound than they are. They don't realize that like big discoveries in science and archaeology are the result of decades of work of cleaning shards and digging dust, as they called it. And that's where like we learn real things about how the world works, and not just like looking at a rock and being like, looks like an alien to me.
Yeah. And I think along with that is there was this big grand speech by Giorgio at the end about like how the world it would be better if everyone came together. And I don't know,
not left, not right.
Hold on. I don't know if you caught this specifically, but he was like, the left needs to come together with the right, and the right, you get it. Like, he didn't want to like, he was like, he didn't want to say, he was like, and the right, you know, and like, he didn't want to like finish that thought because he was like, I don't want this crowd to start booing me, but the left definitely needs to go to the right, and the right
I did not catch that turn of phrase. I just kind of got bought into like the cosmic centrism.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really amusing.
Yeah.
And also, there also is like the thing about like all these people have these common source of information. I was just like, yeah, it's called simple machines and human and physics, and like
the amount I cannot believe these grown men, especially David Childress, who is there, my new favorite enemy,
self-described externally described
Indiana Jones. He has such a thorn in his side about the building of the pyramids, and he is so vocally just like, did they really use ramps to build this big pyramid? Like, it's like the most he's like, that couldn't possibly be it. Not in the wildest, not in the history of the world could that be possible.
We commented on this, but I think that last episode I said that David Childress is like, he's a good brander.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the show showed is that out of all the people, I think he had the best grasp on who this audience was, because he knew that like he didn't need to explain himself. We didn't. There's no skepticism. Nothing had to be like explained, or it was just like aliens were just like, you're just good. Like you don't have to go from there. But so he always like came in with like the one up, because he was just like, what if the only explanation for this could be like a Vimana, and he didn't explain what that was. It just came out of nowhere and everyone was like, yeah, Vimana. Like,
I love this part. So they're talking about Puma Punku. We've talked about Puma Punku before. It's just a refresher. It's like these very intricately carved stones. These are some of like the best examples. These are like the go-to Ancient Aliens example of like really intricately carved stones that like, only precise tooling and stuff, using like lasers and diamond cutting things that we don't even have access to today. How did they do it? All that sort of stuff. We've made a whole episode about it. You can listen to it. They're talking about this in the live show, and it has 2 moments during the Puma Punku talk, which I thought was really funny. So to sort of jump off of what you're talking about, everyone else is they're just like suggesting things that really flow together naturally. Obviously it's a scripted conversation, so of course you would think it would flow together naturally, but like no one's saying anything too outlandish other than the basic claim of Ancient Aliens. But the conversation's flowing really well. They're talking about Puma Punku, and then David Childress is like, the only explanation for these carved, I'm trying to do like his voice, for these like carved stones would be if there was a tool shop that flew down on a Vimana.
Crowd goes wild.
And it's like, how is that? What are you talking? How did you make that big leap just then?
You broke the contract.
A flying tool shop came down?
Yeah.
That's the explanation, according to David Childress.
But like, because like there's a formula to Ancient Aliens, which is that you don't say aliens. What you do is you cast a bunch of doubt on what something could be, because it doesn't fit the way that we understand, usually through a white supremacist lens of a bunch of people's ability to do things. And then there's like, so maybe, but then David Childress is just like, so that's the aliens.
Yeah. And the other part that I think is funny is a very linguistic thing. It's very like Anchorman-esque. And I love when they do this sorts of things. They were showing a clip from the Puma Punku episode. One of them, I'm sure they've been there a million times. But they're showing these holes in one of the stones that are like supposedly like drilled holes that are like very precise and things like that. And David Childress says the phrase, something along the lines of, and these holes are basically perfectly spaced out. And the word basically is doing so much heavy lifting there, because they're showing you a measuring tool to space out these holes, and they're not like 100% accurate.
And then
but he's
like,
saying,
there's a wonderful little After Effects effect where like bing, 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 bing with like all these little like,
the editing
starbursts.
on it was so good. But it's like that Anchorman, like, 60% of the time it works 100% of the time.
Oh, so that was like that was funny. And just
What else?
again, I just like see one. I see I've written multiple times one joke, and it's like every time they mention his fucking hair.
They mention his hair so much. They mention Giorgio's hair.
Yeah. Okay. So the other part too is that Giorgio puts together this, like, he has this narrative. He has this grand cosmological narrative of how civilizations in the universe, in the Giorgio Tsoukalos cinematic universe, do things. And his theory is that essentially aliens come to planets, help them out, leave cryptic clues, no evidence, and then just fuck off to go do it to another planet. And that someday, and as he said, in 5, 10, maybe even 100 years, we're going to go to other star systems and do the same to other people and pass the thing along. And like that, it was like this, like, and he's like, because he was definitely just responding to people that he imagined being like, so it's not like, actually, you're the racist, because I think that the fact that humanity had teachers does not diminish, because he was always really quick to point out, like, this wasn't made by aliens. Humans made this. It just shows, like, it implied, like, he was trying so hard to, like, fight the argument that we had, that the entirety of the ancient astronaut theory is built upon.
To sort of rephrase this, basically what Giorgio was talking about in this show is that the ancient astronaut theory that he proposes, and that a lot of people propose, is that aliens came to Earth to help inform humans on how to build stuff, what the universe is like, all that stuff. And then critics of this theory would be like, well, aren't you taking away from humans by saying, like, oh, they had teachers, but, like, who taught those aliens then, huh? And he's like, well, that's the question, isn't it? I want to keep tracing this back. I want to find the aliens that taught the aliens that taught the aliens that taught the aliens that taught us.
Yeah, that part was very funny, because I was just like, if aliens taught us, then who taught them? And I was like, no one has ever asked you that question.
Yeah.
that question is stupid.
He was phrasing it like, I don't know, but maybe that's a criticism that he gets. But there's so many bigger ones.
I used to be a teacher for a while, and we say there are no stupid questions.
That was, and just to be clear, that was one of his answers to the question, to the quote unquote audience question of, what would be the first thing? Met an alien, what would be the first thing you asked if you met an alien? The previous answer, William Henry, was that his name? Or
what would a smart person ask you? That was a funny one.
No, that was Nick Pope said
that. Was Nick Pope, right.
William, the philosopher, what was his title?
Investigative
mythologist. He his question that got huge applause from the audience, or the question that he would ask the alien was, who do you pray to, and what do you think happens when you die? Oh boy. That was his big question, which is like that would be I would like to ask that to an alien. It would be an interesting question, but then it's just funny to me that you follow that question basically about religion and spirituality with Giorgio Tsoukalos being like, and then I want to know the gods that made the other gods that made the other gods that made the us.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Eric wasn't there to be like, how do you fuck?
I must know how to fuck you. He was in a video, though. They played a video of him
being very excited about the Nazca
super
lines.
Excited. He's like a puppy when you show him the Nazca lines. It's adorable.
Yeah. What sucks is that the thing that really stuck out too is like when they're showing all those videos, all those places they've been, and I'm like, man, why did they get a travel budget to make this?
I know, right? We had no travel budget to make this. We're in a hotel room right now, just to sit talking to each other on
podcast
microphones.
Literally brought to you by Hotwire.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So then what I find really interesting is that after they go on this big long thing talking about the alien stuff, then they start to really change. Like they go into a sort of third act where they get into like they're kind of trying to like, this isn't just you guys giving us money so that we can talk about random bullshit that's been debunked for decades for an hour.
Yes.
This is a movement. And he starts going into the UAP task force. Like he tries to reference everybody being part of the UAP task force, which like this task force was huge after he mentioned just so many names involved with it. He starts bringing up things like what's it called? Like Avi Loeb, who Angela Collier made an amazing video showing how Avi Loeb's like also a giant like grifter. Then also mentions Michio Kaku, who he has been drifting in the grift direction for many, many years now.
Yeah, what a character, what an interesting career path.
And so, and then they got into the cosmic centrism and kind of were building this idea that that we're building that none of this stuff would have been taken seriously if it wasn't for you guys out in the audience.
They hammered this point home a lot, which like on one hand I get, you and I as creators, we have like a whole segment at the end of our show where we thank people for writing reviews and like sharing the word and being like, this podcast really only grows with word of mouth. So like I get wanting to like appreciate your audience and things like that, but turning it into, it really felt like they were trying to rally up the audience and successfully doing so, I would say, by saying things like, we don't have to whisper aliens under our breath. We can say it out in the open, and we're a part of this movement. And
your granddaughter has to invite you to Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah, we're changing history, and when we ask questions and we don't get answers, that's a form of censorship and things like that.
Yeah, it like the conservative coding was pretty like demographics wise, it felt like the closest thing that I'll experience to being in the middle of a Trump rally. But it was, and like, just like random people being like, Giorgio! And like,
oh my God.
Like it was like, what's it called? Like the last act of Akira.
Yeah. And like, I know we're just picking on, we always pick on these grifters and things like that. But something that we get comments on a lot, like especially negative comments on a lot, is that the people think that you and I aren't open-minded. I would say we are very open-minded on the idea of aliens existing. I just don't believe in the ancient part of it right now.
Yeah, like we're looking at this, I'm just like, a lot of like, it's just like an active rejection of any form of like hierarchy of evidence or like Occam's razor type thinking. Like it is saying like, because in many times, sometimes they'll refer to things that are genuine archaeological mysteries. Like I don't have an answer right now for how they did all of the amazing stonework that went into it. And even Giorgio like implied that they had some process that used like a way that birds make things.
Yeah,
and
that was really interesting.
And I was like, I don't know if that's true. Cause like this show is very not above lying, but I'm like, that could have been an answer. That does sound like a way that indigenous people could have figured out how to do that. Like, and then, but the thing is like, he again comes with an answer that's like, this is a way they could have done it. I'm like, yeah, that is a way they could have done it without aliens.
That's interesting, bud.
And then they're like, but alien.
but then aliens also could have been a way. And this is what I was going to lead to is that even as much as some people might say that we're not open-minded when talking about this sort of stuff, being at this live show, to me, really hammered in the point that, number one, these are obviously not experts in these fields. They will say that they are, but what they really are and what they desperately want to be are entertainers. And that's fine. I always say that about this podcast is that
it's like 11 something at night and we're making content. So.
This is an entertainment podcast. We don't have degrees or at least I don't have a degree.
I'm not an archaeologist.
Right.
I have degrees on a handful of things that very rarely become the topic of these podcasts
but we're open about this.
Yeah.
And they seem to try to hide behind it. And then the other thing too is that there were several points of this live show that featured a call and response from Giorgio Tsoukalos where he would say something like, the mainstream archaeologists say no, but we say, and then he points to the audience and they'd be like, yes, and things like that. And like that to me is like, that doesn't feel very like open-minded. That feels like people trying to tell people what the answer is and like tell people how to think.
Yeah, they're very much leaning into, and I think there's a lot of people in the UFO space who have this as sort of like grievance politics. That is at the core of things like fascist politics and also like radical right-wing stuff. But I don't want to bring everybody to that point. We're supposed to have fun dunking on people right now. But the idea that like these people who have been denied their, like, they were right the whole time and you've been right, everyone made fun of you, and now we're going to prove them all that you actually are smart and cool and your wiener's humongous and like everything. Yeah. And like there was very much like that vibe in the air of like,
yes,
you have been bullied by scientists and archaeologists and your granddaughter who won't invite you to Thanksgiving and like yes, all these things. And now it's our time to reign. And all like I can contrast that with is like, as I crossed the border today, driving to Kalamazoo, I kept seeing Trump 2024 signs. I kept seeing like random anti-Joe Biden like posters that made no sense to me at all because they were just like bloody Joe. And I'm like, okay. Right. And I remember that this state, Michigan, is one of the states that Joe Biden was able to like take back in 2020. And I just can't help but feel like if you see the world through this, that like we've been wrong for too long and we're going to take it back. And this time it's going to be great. Yeah. And we're going to be the ones that are right and smart and our wieners will be huge. And, and I can't help but think like how that the exact same people are having that exact same thought process on a much more dangerous subject outside of this that is going to royally fuck up everybody's lives next year.
Now, look, I'll be the first to say hashtag not all Michiganders. All right. I'm a former Michigander. I grew up literally here in Kalamazoo. A little bit further out in Portage, but basically here. And yeah, there's something about like stepping off the train getting here, which by the way, I've been awake for far too long with so little sleep. I've been awake since 2:45 a.m. I've been awake for far too long. But even like stepping off the train to get here, I was just like, oh man, this brings back a lot of memories. And then like just going to this show, I was like, I'm not particularly sure if they're great memories of living here though, now that I think about it.
Michigan, I mean, it's just like I always think about like if you're like a hardcore Trump supporter, the fact that the Midwest flipped blue in 2020 would sting pretty hard because that was basically like, you know, the 2016 election was won on the fact that Hillary Clinton decided that the Midwest was just not worth campaigning in, and then Trump just like cleaned up the map. And I think a lot of people who have lived in like these states that have been pretty solidly Democratic for a long time felt that was like a big like coming up, and then losing in 2020 probably hurt. And now, like I think that if I were a Trump supporter right now, I would think that given the way the winds are blowing, because Democrats tried nothing and they're all out of ideas, that like that now it's like it's coming back. And I know that this is just me and my sick brain, but I can't think like the exact same people are having that feeling politically, and then they go to this show and are having almost the exact same, like, you were wrong when people said that when you talked about UFOs, like you were wrong that when like it was wrong when people made fun of you for talking about UFOs, but it was also bad when like your family stopped inviting you to things because you got into QAnon, and like it was bad when like when people made fun of you for eating horse dewormer, and like all those kinds of like that grievance politics kind of coming back. And I felt like this. Like that might be the reason why it resonated so hard with a lot of these people.
Yeah. Look, that a very interesting political angle to potential. I don't know how long we've been recording for.
Long enough. I think that we've tapped it out.
I feel like this has been a really interesting experience. I thought this was going to be more fun. I'm walking away from it feeling like
kind of sad and disappointed.
kind of sad.
Yeah.
Honestly,
it was one of those things, and unfortunately, like, again, to bring it to like the Trump thing, it's just like it was somebody. It's a group of people who are trying to do a quick cash grab.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it is working because they are targeting and messaging in a way that resonates with a lot of people who have a lot of resentment, and that resentment wants to be channeled into a feeling of righteous revenge. Mm-hmm. And the other side of that is not good.
Yeah. There's also a lot of self-congratulatory stuff in the show talking about how like there was a point where David Childress was talking about a bowl of some kind, and he was like, as far as I know, the only show that's ever talked about this bowl is Ancient Aliens. And everyone applauded to that as well. There was a lot of applause breaks. Even when the audience wasn't clapping initially, you can tell they planned for applause breaks at some points. Like people had lines that like quips that they would drop to be like, and that's that sort of like a feeling to it. And then everyone would pause and then wait for the audience to clap.
Yeah. Because like my brain was like, they are trying to make money off of a extremely dark impulse that is very powerful right now.
Yeah.
And not only that, but like the people who did that didn't even get a good show out of the deal. Like
I think they got what they wanted out of the deal.
True, but like
I think they got validation from the deal. Did they get anything new? Not really. Did they get to see the people that they like, and they get to hear those people tell them that they're right? Yeah, and I think that's probably what people want.
I guess so, but I would imagine that those people probably got more genuine lines and reactions from their favorite people on stuff they watched on TV than what we saw on that show, because that was very much them. Like, it felt like they were giving us like a timeshare presentation.
Oh yeah, it felt like that to us. but the audience, you can't deny the audience was into it though.
True, but like even compared to like watching the show, which I unfortunately keep doing.
Yeah.
Like their reactions of like being in the field and seeing stuff and being like, oh, like this, like that's more human and connecting than like, hey guys, this obviously alien.
Yeah.
Here's a joke that I got from a book from 1943.
I think Giorgio Tsoukalos and Nick Pope were really into it. I think Nick Pope as the quote unquote moderator role, I think he was really into that because he felt like he could make jokes that were not very good. But yeah, like David Childress and William Henry were just sort of like there. And David Childress's role was to really be quiet for most of it until it got to a point on his cue card where he could say the most batshit insane thing. And then everyone would be like, yeah, I agree. And all that to say, if you're thinking about going to one of these live shows because you think it'll be a good, funny, memeable night,
it cost a lot of money and it wasn't very fun.
It cost a lot of money. It's not very fun. And I walked away really like...
The vibes were
it was
very
chilling.
Off. Yeah.
It was chilling in some ways.
To parrot the Zoomers that neither of us have any claim to.
Yep.
The vibes were very off.
But hey, as Nick Pope would say,
that's just a theory, an ancient astronaut theory.
As Nick Pope said at the end of the show, watch this space. Yeah. Watch this space.
What words he had such an interesting way of conceiving of human sentences.
Hey, watch this space is a term people use.
Yeah, but he's like not in that way.
But he's like 60, so
yeah,
it just feels weird.
So then I guess like at least we're gonna have a fan meetup tomorrow, and that's gonna make things a lot better.
Hopefully that makes it better. Thank you so much for listening, for making this possible. I know that we're walking away from this, at least I am, sort of like bummed a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like I just watched Inside.
But it wasn't a bad experience.
No, because I got to hang out with Scott and drink beer.
Well, so. Yeah, but I'm also glad that we went to it because now I feel like I've learned a lot and I've walked away with like a different understanding. Because again, I thought this was going to be really small and intimate. Mm-hmm. I was not expecting 1,000 people to be there.
Yeah, and also like all of the stuff about the like, I think I learned more from the vibe of the room.
Yes.
Than I'm realizing like I know that people will probably like dismiss this whole like thing because I study the far right constantly and I study conspiracy theories and I just see these connections. But like the vibe in that room to me was like, oh, it's here. Like this is the thing. I'm not wrong. But that's just a theory, a really convoluted theory about fascist politics and grievances and conspiracy theories. But
wow, that was directly from the FNAF movie when Matt Pett did his cameo. That was exactly
did he get in that?
Yeah, do you not know that?
No.
Okay, Tristan, where can people find you online?
Well, first of all, this show, if I said you should keep listening to this podcast because if you want to listen to next week's episode, you can right now if you sign up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probablynotaliens. Yeah. If you want to find my work, I do YouTube videos for some reason about understanding how the world works. You know that scene from Inside with Sokko?
Yeah.
I basically just do that every month. I do that. I am Sokko.
You're not the person holding Sokko.
I am Sokko. Yeah, I am Sokko. So if you want more Sokko, you can go to stepbackhistory.com. Scott, if I wanted to watch a video about a subject that came out 10 years ago, where would I go?
Yeah, you don't have anything
I don't have it here.
You, huh? You can go to my YouTube channel called Nerdsync, Nerdsync. It's all one word. And I am hopefully at some point soon going to release a video about
you're video edging right now.
I'm video edging right now. I'm just waiting for sponsor approval. It's done. It's up. I just need to hit publish. All about me solving a 20-year-old Scooby-Doo video game mystery, kind of. So go
read between the pages on that one, or read between the panels on that one.
There you go. Read between the pixels, maybe.
Oh,
think about that. But that's what I do. It's fun stuff. And thank you to everyone who writes reviews of this show on Apple Podcasts and leaves feedback on Spotify. Like we said, we really do appreciate you. It's because of your listens that we were able to do this, even though we're sad now.
You're smart and you're great and your wiener is huge. And you were wrong to when you were not invited to Thanksgiving because I don't know.
That's right. That's correct. You're the best.
And we're going to kiss you on your forehead every night because how much we like you.
Yeah. And thanks for just spreading the word. And the best place to send people is probsnotaliens.com. It's got links to everything. Until next time. That's it, right?
Got to do in unison because we have the subtle thing. So
you're
Scott Nicewander.
I'm Scott Nicewander.
I'm Tristan Johnson.
And the truth is out there. Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, that was like that was the most clinical way we could have said probably.
But that was good vibes. That was like what's it called? That was like and I heard there was a secret chord where David vibed and it pleased the Lord.
David
it was like
vibed.
the sacred vibe.
Yeah. David said, "Watch this space."
God, okay. You need to go to bed.